take two. You can tell me if it is or is not working. It should be working this time. So let me know. So just flick me through a message. I can see lots of people saying I'm still on mute. Everything here tells me I'm online. Let me know. Let me know. Because Steve Tiger Z is right. I'm wasting my breath. So fire me a message, guys. I can see lots of people saying there's no sound, and I've realised why. But let me know if I'm still not being heard. Fire me a message. Or should I keep talking? Let's have a look. We should be ticking along here, I hope. And now I seem to, let me have a look. I've got to try out a few things here, guys, obviously. Aha, I see what's going on. Here we go, that one here. And what about this one here? Typical start for Simon, getting it slightly wrong. Let's try this. Woohoo! Thank you, Ben. We're back on. We are back on. So that is brilliant. It's funny, I've got a little machine here, and there was just one little red light that I hadn't seen before, but all it was telling me is I hadn't quite 100% plugged in the microphone. Imagine if I was running the country. Anyway, guys, good morning. Thank you for your patience. Lovely to have you joining me here. I said Solid Ground's a chance where we sit down, well, I sit down at least, and talk around the issues of today. So there's a few things to go through. Obviously, a lot around actually the hikoi. Not so much commentary on the ins and outs of it, more around how it's been reported. But let's have a discussion around all and any of that. If you are coming and watching this across a variety of platforms, know that you can do so. Well, send me comments like Ben and Viv and Rosie and others are doing. If you're on the Family First Facebook page or you're on Family First's YouTube, if you're putting in messages there, you're going to have it pop up just like Ethel's. And I can do this. If you're on my page or LinkedIn, X, by the way, welcome. It's lovely to have you along. I'll go back and read your comments, but only those people commenting on the YouTube or on Family First Facebook page are going to come directly through to me here. So look, I'm going to jump into it. There's a few things to touch on before we get on to what I think is, pretty much the topic of the morning. And then we've got lovely Viv here from Taurua. Lovely to have you on board. And as Rosie's pointed, finally some sound, although I suspect a lot of people in the realm or the country would love me to be silent. But definitely shout out, let me know where you're from. So the big story of the day or the week, and certainly today, because the hikoi reaches Parliament, we'll come to that. But I just thought I'd touch on a couple of other stories. One I found quite amusing was this, and I hope you can see it. I think you can recognise all the people there, and I found this amusing. I'm actually not trying to make significant political commentary on this, but you'll see it's on my right, probably the same for you, is of course RFK Jr., who's been named the Health Secretary. But why I found this quite funny, and I really want to stress again, there's no political commentary in it, but he's really big into pushing back against Big Pharma, big food as he calls it, anything with chemicals and additives, and here he is. Snacking down on a Big Mac. So if you know anything about Donald Trump, and you can see him grinning there like a Cheshire cat, there's all the McDonald's with his son. The man standing at the back is Mike Johnson. He's the Speaker of the House. And of course, Elon Musk. So they're all chowing down on some Maccas on Trump's plane, which, by the way, I find fascinating. How you get McDonald's on a plane, I don't exactly know. Well, not fresh. But I just thought it was quite amusing, for me at least. RFK there chomping down on whatever type of burger, and Rosie's nailed that. And look, again, for me, it's not overt political commentary. I mean, we all try to live and eat healthy, but it doesn't mean you can't have the odd outburst. But I just thought it was funny. So g'day to Ethel, she's there in Mangawai. We've got Shelley the Kiwi in beautiful Waitangi, gorgeous part of the country. Anyway, I just thought that was funny. On a more serious note, there was this story a couple of days ago, and I don't have the links to the various podcasts and discussions I've done on this, but This is the whole surrogacy question, and look, I could do a whole solid ground on this, and maybe I should, and we'll have more guests on my Family Matters podcast, but I just thought it was an interesting, so we've jumped from burgers and JFK to surrogacy. There's a big dramatic switch, but I just wanted to highlight this story because there's a lot of talk around surrogacy at the moment. There's a lot of desire to push for change, and you're getting a lot of stories in the media like this one that just make it sound all lovely and simple, and that this woman's just clearly creating a baby for these two men. But what struck me, and I can't obviously share the whole article with you, is at no point in this article, as with others that the New Zealand Herald's been running, and I call them puff pieces, is the rights of the child mentioned at all. There's no discussion of that at all. It's just a focus on that these two men want to have kids. Of course, they can't have kids. Welcome to biology, folks. So they've wanted to effectively purchase a child. The article complains really that they can't pay much money to this woman because, well, commercial surrogacy is rightly banned in New Zealand, but part of what's being pushed here is that people should be able to purchase women's wombs and purchase babies. And we've seen, if you sat down and heard me talk to Katie Faust a few weeks back on the podcast, in America, we talk about big food and big pharma, where you've got big fertility, where literally people are buying and selling children. And I don't want to overdo this morning, but it was just picking up this article from a couple of days ago. And again, it's all just so lopsided. Maybe those two guys should wake up and realize that there is biological reality. For her, what is it? Because she says she feels no emotional attachment to this child. For me personally, that's like a big red light. That's a mental health issue. As I say, the article mentioned absolutely nothing about the rights of the child, who, in effect, these men are going to be paying for her to never talk about the child again. So it was just wrong. It's just wrong, really. But both the way it is in the reporting. In happier news, I'm going to share this very briefly. Where's my... got to jump between my screens here. I just thought, this from Peter sums it up. Macca's is never fresh. That's exactly right. Vanessa says she loves the pic. That's the one with RFK in it with the burger. Rosie and I had that one up before, and then as we were talking, Ben's nailed it around the whole surrogacy question. This is the whole point. I think Katie, as in Faust, put it really well. She said, basically, you're purchasing silence. You're buying off the mother in this case to never make contact with the child again, and something's not right, really. And Vanessa's admitting she's a carnivore, which is great. So anyway, there's that. Now, God, there's so many screens for me this morning. I'm going to jump to this story here. I don't know if you'd followed a while back. A guy called Paul Burns was being dragged before police charged him for daring to stand. This is New Zealand, by the way. By the way, I have not forgotten about my new mugs. I know a number of you want them. I've been a bit distracted the last week, but I'm working out how to get them to you. So I'm thinking at this moment, I've got lots of them to give away. It's more about how we post them to you. And obviously, long and short, I'll come back to you next week. But what I'm thinking is for those who want one, I'll give out my email. And if people are probably prepared to pay $5 or something to cover my couriering costs, we'll flick them to you. But anyway, this is a story from New Zealand. Long and short, Paul Burns is a pro-lifer. He was standing, if you can read that on Lambton Key, saying $100 to the first person who proves that slavery is more evil than abortion. And then so he was approached, as you might expect with someone with a sign, to debate. And they, as a lot of young people and older ones tend to do, I've had it myself, to say, the world's overpopulated. We really should be killing babies to stop overpopulation. And he used what would be a standard rhetorical flourish as, if the world's overpopulated, why is it that you're focusing on killing the unborn child? Why would you not, kill yourselves? Next moment, he's been arrested by the police. That he's been using offensive language. I suspect probably an argument that he was inciting people to suicide or something absolutely ridiculous. Fortunately, and kudos to the Free Speech Union, they backed him, as did others, and the police have dropped the charges. But why I mentioned it this morning, firstly, it's a victory for the pro-life side, that actually you are allowed to have conversations about these topics. You're allowed to be rational, philosophical, ethical, which is, a big part of what Solid Ground's about. But also, celebration of his success aside, absolute condemnation of the police that they charged him in the first place. But you should see this as the harassment of the state. A number of you will have found that regardless, we even have to think back to COVID days. Any of us in the pro-life movement will know, obviously in the law changes, safe spaces, all of this is designed to harass people out of their opinions. And again, all he did was a rhetorical flourish to challenge the concept of overpopulation. And I found it too. I was debating with someone the other day, again, around the abortion question. It was like, well, we really should abort these babies because they might grow up in poor families and have a bad upbringing. And you're going, who on earth are you to decide who is and is not going to live a good life? And if you're worried about the unborn child being born into financial strife, what does that say of people who are living today? People on benefits over intergenerations. Are we meant to be doing something to them akin to what we do to the unborn child? It's just absolute madness. So just a victory, but this is the ongoing, and something we need to keep an eye on, folks, because unfortunately, particularly coming out of the previous government, but it doesn't seem to have been completely unwound by this government. The police, a bit like in the UK and other jurisdictions, are getting more obsessed with your words and someone's hurt feelings than actually pursuing some of the major crimes that we have. Getting some lovely feedback here from the people like Viv and Lynette, Mike and others with the mug. So long and short, by next week, or I'll put a message out, we'll get those distributed out. As I say, I'll give you my email or our administrators so you can obviously give me your address. I might have been involved in the past with foreign affairs and defence and intelligence stuff, but I'm not that good at finding people's address without you telling me. And if people want to help cover the shipping cost, if you will. Christine and Brendan here, a really good comment. This is around this case with Paul. It's right. They should be allowed to use their discretion, but not. I'd say in these cases they're just taking it a bit too far. So focus on the major crimes that we have in society these days. Nuts. And Charmaine's right. They need better judgment. Really, a policeman and time and effort was taken to arrest and charge Paul for simply having an opinion. Just absolutely ridiculous. And Shelley here says, problem is no one wants to debate things anymore. They just have temper tantrums. And look, we're about to see that. We've been seeing in the last few days. It's probably a good segue actually into... I was just going to share this. I was going to segue into the Hekoi stuff, but just going to quickly share this too. Not that you're normally talking about rectums in the morning, but this was in the news yesterday. And I thought I'd highlight this to you. So this is a maths exam, NCEA Level 3. So this is Year 13 students. To be fair, on the mathematical side, I think it was looking at either proportions or distances between parts of the human body. But I think this, for me, illustrates that ideological capture, which is happening in our school system, particularly from gender ideologists, critical theorists, and others. Why on earth will you need a maths question to focus on body parts? Now, I'm the first to say the human body is incredible and amazing, but there's sort of a decorum, is that the right word? There's no need to be having a maths. And again, I haven't shown you all the parts it was pointing out, but by the way, I actually thought the title of this was quite funny. I always like a good pun. But honestly, this is just an example of, again, that ideological capture, which is through our schools. With the myriad of other examples one could find to do mathematics, they decided, no, they're going to have to focus on private body parts, just crazy, really, isn't it? And look, Rosie's nailed it. Excuse me, I am losing my voice, so my microphone was off at the start, but believe it or not, half the time I was croaking. I honestly don't know what's wrong with my voice, which is probably a blessing to the nation. But yeah, I hadn't clicked the button. Rosie nails it. We don't need this. Simply Greens now. Then yes, amasa mata mum. Goat days. Yes, exactly. But I've been told, and relatively quite reliably, and good comments here by Christine and Brendan too. So much maths now is more around English, and then not even English. It's other languages too. And you're going, it's maths for God's sake. Says me with a slight blasphemy there. Sorry guys, but anyway, it's insane. And speaking of insane, because I am going to finish by 8:30 this morning, the big news, of course, is the hikoi. We've got this big march going to Parliament at the moment. And by the way, there's going to be a range of opinions, I'm sure, here of those who think the Treaty Principles Bill, which has been arguably being protested, is a good thing. There'll be those who think it's a bad thing. There'll be people with a range of views. So I'm not really at this time going to go into whether it's a good or a bad thing. What I will say, though, is everyone should have their ability to speak, to debate, and to protest peacefully, I might add. I think that's the thing everyone's watching today. I suspect most of the protesters are, like a lot of protesters, perfectly fine. It'll be interesting to see whether there's a few hotheads or not who, particularly, the emotion of the moment overwhelms them. Let's hope not. But I know, talking to various MPs and those in Wellington, that there's a lot of anxiety there at the moment. But what I really wanted to focus on this morning was really just it is duplicity, actually, the hypocritical reporting from our mainstream media around all of this. And there's too much to mention an example through, but I'll just take you through it. So, look, because you guys are all aware of this as well. Oh, by the way, as I say, it's good that people get the chance to speak and protest. What is fascinating, though, about these protesters, and we saw it by the 400 church leaders a few weeks back, and the KCs, the King's Councils, who wrote last week, they're all trying to silence other people, and this is that's a hypocrisy in itself there. It's the element around this which makes me quite disturbed. It's a bit like the Paul Burns pro-life case that we just mentioned too. It's an attempt to shut down any discussion or debate. So as I say, if you support the Treaty Principle Bill, if you think it's ridiculous, that is fine. But people should be allowed to discuss and debate. Unfortunately, a lot around this hikoi and so forth is all about shutting people down. But the way the media has been treating things is, by the way, pretty appalling. So this is just one of the headlines. State Highway 1 has been blocked in both directions. That is a major disruption. But this and a whole lot of other articles, and I can't show them all, we'd be here all morning, quite fawning coverage of the hikoi. It's just this wonderful walk that's blocking the Auckland Harbour Bridge. It's now blocking State Highway 1 in both directions. Tamaki Drive is all blocked up. You can't get to work quickly. You can't drop your kids off. But don't worry, it's all just a lovely, happy event. If you've been following it, there's lots of pictures of police officers actually helping the protesters create their banners, so on and so forth. But then Brian Tamaki, love him or hate him, he did a hikoi this weekend as well. And his one was sort of a Make New Zealand Great Again, I think, and something around the New Zealand flag. But just look at the difference in the headlines. Outrage, reckless, unlawful, irresponsible. So, as I say, you can just see the duplicity in the mainstream media's reporting. Again, you don't have to support both of these protests. You don't have to support either. You might support one, not the other. That's really not my point this morning. It's just look at the very different ways of headlining these. So the hikoi, the whole thing around the treaty, it's just lovely. No commentary, you've just blocked State Highway 1. But Brian Tamaki, it's fury, there's recklessness, it's unlawful, on and on and on. And then you get, another example, as I say, blocked. This is just another headline, again, it's blocked. And then this one, again, mayhem as he heads up one lane of State Highway 1. Now, don't get me wrong, I prefer they didn't block the highways at all, thanks very much. But you can just see how the reporting is so different, and it's just very, very frustrating. And I've tried to have a picture, but this is just one of the examples of just blatant media bias. And Bob McCoskrie, of course, who heads up Family First, did a great Substack on this yesterday. I'm writing a similar one today, going down a slightly different angle. But here is Nivek Rogers, so one of their very senior executives and the person touted to become TVNZ's news editor. Well, she decided it was a great idea to attend the protest, the treaty protest, and to Instagram about it. We had Mehrangi Forbes from RNZ also, another very senior journalist, attend and Instagram all about it. And this just is that blatant bias in media, because, if you read what I've got here, TVNZ's always about, no, we're very impartial, we've got our new guidelines. Well, they're clearly not impartial. Now, let's be really, really clear. The right of protest does apply to everybody. But someone like a journalist does have to make a decision, both for fact but also perception. Like, you cannot attend a protest, as this woman has done and other journalists have done, or the police officers, by the way, attend these protests, support these protests, and then pretend that you can objectively report on them. It's just not possible. You may remember I referenced this in a Substack in a talk a month or two ago around the Dunedin Hospital, that the local paper there was all in support of the protests and slamming the government, but then trying to suggest that they could objectively report on the matter. Well, of course they can't. Of course they can't. So that's the point there. So again, the right to protest applies to everyone. And, I would make the argument to you guys that, Nivek, if that's how I say her name, and apologies if I've got it wrong, but she's welcome to attend the protest. But then don't try and tell us that there's any impartiality possible. So, yeah, absolutely nuts. And, speaking of the consequences of all of this, I better say not directly, but the consequences is that trust in the media and the desire to be part of media is tanking. And so North and South magazine, many of you will be familiar with it. Well, that's going under. They're just ceasing temporarily, they say. But, be under no illusions. I doubt they're going to start back up again. If they do, it'll be a splutter and then they'll go again. Really clear, this is not directly linked to the Hikoi. But when we talk about media bias, and we can go through a whole list of examples, particularly, any of the topics we've talked about today, from surrogacy to pro-life issues to obviously the Treaty of Waitangi, they are so biased that people are switching off, which is why the ratings for the likes of the news tanking, people are switching off the radios, and they're not buying the magazines. And so this is just an example. It's just an example. And my final point before we look to wrap up this morning is idiotic statements like this from the likes of Jenny Shipley. So she's a former National MP and was the Prime Minister for a very short time. And this is just, well, I think first and foremost, there's often a desire, and I've seen it quite from centre-right politicians who they can't help themselves of wanting to try and reassert their relevance, but they do it by going woke, basically. And because they want to be loved by the media again. They want to be relevant after all those years, in her case, being out of Parliament, and to be honest, being hauled rightly over the coals, I suspect, for what happened around Mainzeal. Look it up. But they want to be loved by the mainstream or the left media, and so they fawn to them, which is terrible. And then inviting a civil war, well, that's actually in itself quite an inflammatory statement. But one has to ask the question of Jenny, who is going to be fighting this war? So you're hearing a lot of rhetoric around this fear of violence, and now her trying to up the ante to a civil war. It's a reckless statement. Thing is, I don't see supporters of the Treaty Principles Bill as taking up arms and violently pushing their case. If you watched Parliament last week, if you've seen elements of the protest, you'll realise which side is prepared. And the Te Pāti Māori have been quite explicit in some of their advertising with guns and so forth. If, and I want to stress that word, if there is any pretense that we're inviting a civil war, Jenny Shipley, it's not from the majority of New Zealanders. It's from a very small, reckless, dangerous side. And unfortunately, idiotic statements like this actually just fuel it, and in a bizarre way legitimise such attempts towards violence. I mean, it's just absurd and it's just dangerous, absolutely dangerous and reckless. So yeah, and the last thing, then I'll come back to the comments. I just thought on a more positive note, I follow Foreign Affairs, to give a bouquet to the government. They have put in some new foreign interference legislation to Parliament. If any of you follow these things, so this is a good thing. Basically, it modernizes the way our systems work. And unfortunately, and maybe I can talk about it another time, there's a lot of foreign interference in New Zealand, unfortunately, particularly from China. This just updates the law. It just updates it. I won't go through all the details. I think it's a good thing. The only problem, of course, there is no money. We're actually seeing the government cut defence spending and cut intelligence spending. That makes life a lot harder. And my last point, and I'm going to put it more as a rhetorical question, but I'm not sure one should be smiling so strongly when shaking the hand of a genocidal authoritarian. That's just a comment there. We have to keep our relationship with China, but I was just struck by this image. I was a bit too happy. The man Xi Jinping is not a good person at all. It doesn't mean you refuse to shake one's hand. I just wouldn't be grinning. I wouldn't be grinning so strongly myself. But just returning then to your comments, I'll put this one up here. I'll just go through some of them quickly because then I'm going to have to go. Shelley's got a good point here. And actually this is probably more relating to the foreign affairs question from Simply Green. But what are our interests? What else? Sorry, all these comments are coming through. I'm losing some of them. Awake, not awake. Civil war. It is. It's just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. To even say it, I would argue, legitimizes the side that is going to be violent. And what seems to miss Jenny is, to be fair, it's not David Seymour. It's not his supporters. They're not out threatening violence in any way, but it is legitimizing those who believe, and they're basically Marxist revolutionaries. It's just very, very dangerous. So we've got this one here coming through. Good comment here from Peter. Look, I think they will treat they already are treating these protesters very different to how they dealt with those around COVID and the mandates. I think this is one of the reasons people are getting quite frustrated. So piles and piles of comments rightly into this space. So thank you for that, guys. Hey, look, a last couple of points before I sign off for the morning, because I've actually got quite a busy day ahead. Remember, we've got our, where are they? We do our Substacks, so if you want to go onto substack.com, you can check out the latest. This is Bob. He's writing about the mainstream media. This reporter you can see here is another great example of someone meant to be reporting about the news, but instead has ended up singing a waiata in support of the protests. How on earth she can say that she's a journalist is beyond me, but a great piece by Bob. I've got a new one coming, but I wrote about the stupidity in Parliament last week. My basic point being the Māori Party talks a lot about tikanga, but it only goes one way, which is theirs. Everyone else is to be disrespected. As you also know, I do a show on a Friday morning called Speak Free. This is with Reality Check Radio. You can always jump on to realitycheck.radio. You can listen online or download the app. And just to highlight what was, I thought, a really great interview was with Professor Nigel Biggar last week, and we talked everything from colonialism to slavery and how the West doesn't have to feel guilty about all and everything. A little guilt is proportionate, but too much has been weaponized into matters, basically to turn things into politics. Yes. Oh, I've just seen some of the comments and got distracted again. Guys, I will come back on very briefly. I'm just going to let you know, of course, about all our other programs. I'll do that now.
If you're looking for news that you can trust, commentary on key family and social issues, and conservative conversations, go no further. Family First has them all. Monday nights, live at 8 p.m, Straight Talk with our panel. Tuesday mornings, live at 8 a.m, Solid Ground with Simon O'Connor. Wednesdays, watch for the latest episode of Pulse Point to drop. We watch the news so that you don't have to. Thursdays, live at 5 p.m, political playback with Bob McCoskrie and Simon O'Connor discussing the week in Parliament and politics in general. Plus, there's regular episodes of social commentary with McBlog and interviews on family matters throughout the week. You can watch these live and also on demand on our website, Facebook page, X, Instagram, LinkedIn, and on our YouTube channel. Finally, something worth watching that you can trust. Go to familyfirst.watch for more details.
So thank you all for being with me this morning. Thank you for your patience, because once again, Simon, speaking in the third person, didn't fully plug his microphone in. Guys, it's been lovely to have you join me. I look forward to seeing you next Tuesday. Obviously, we've got Bob and I doing political playback on Thursday. I have no doubt after what's about to happen today, we will find lots to discuss. So join us then. That's Thursday live from 5 p.m. But in the meantime, you have a wonderful, wonderful day. I'll be back in touch next week and look forward to chatting to you all then.